Hi, it's Dwyer. Let me wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. It's November 28th, 2024. Let's talk NFL MVP. But first, remember the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, we're just going to talk about the top contenders here. I'm going to tell you the situation that I think might well create the NFL MVP, right? First, let's talk about what I'm not spending money on. Saquon Barkley. I think Barkley has had a tremendous year. Barkley's over 1,300 yards as I make this video, right? But folks, recognize the politics. This is the league of Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, right? The MVP is really a quarterback award, right? It's not a running back award. You really do have to get to 2,000 yards to win the MVP if you're a running back. Let me also point out, too, for the fantasy wonks out there, if you look at the wins and losses of the Eagles with certain players and without certain players, it hurts Saquon Barkley's candidacy. If you consider the impact that A.J. Brown has on the Eagles' success. In fact, it's even worse than that. While we look at teams like the Bills and why we say, okay, their wide receiving core has been reconfigured, while many people are wondering how Josh Allen is making it work, and he's the favorite at a plus 125 to win the MVP award. Just understand, most people look at the Eagles, we remember them having a double-digit lead in the Super Bowl just a few years ago against Pat Mahomes. In other words, this team's had recent success. The team is loaded. Right? You look around and you say, wow, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, a rough defense. I believe that hurts Saquon Barkley's candidacy. The fact that he's on a team that's widely viewed as being among the most talented in the league. Right? So let's shift it up here. And let's talk about events. Because you and I understand this is a media award, right? People are going to go off of what they think the crowd's going off of. If there's a big event, no matter how stacked the deck is in one guy's favor, right? If there's a big event and we're looking at the event and the teams seem equally yoked, then of course, whoever wins that event, whoever has the big day. Last year it was Lamar Jackson, Christmas Day against Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Jackson threw a bunch of touchdowns. Brock Purdy threw a bunch of interceptions. That sealed the deal for this award. Well, this year I want people to look at December 15th. That's the game, right? Let's just talk about one of the biggest stories of the year. The Detroit Lions. They're in contention to be the top seed in the NFC. I'm telling you, as you can imagine, we saw it last year. You're going to get into the month of December and people are going to be talking about how long it's been for the Lions. You're going to start seeing people like Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson at games. You're going to see them in interviews, right? The fan base is going to come out in force. You're going to see Eminem wearing Lions gear. Well, understand, on December 15th, the Lions playing at home are going to be playing the front runner, odds-wise, right now, for the MVP award, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Right now, the question is whether both quarterbacks Josh Allen and Jared Goff can keep it going so that that game has relevance. In other words, if both guys are able to win games leading into that, and if we start talking about the possibility of the Bills, another team that, it's been a long time, right? Neither of these teams has won a Super Bowl, right? If the Bills continue winning and the Lions continue winning, then even though Lamar Jackson is having a statistically dominant season, even though as I make this video, he leads the NFL in passing yards, right? Lamar Jackson has more passing yards right now than Pat Mahomes this year. That's how ridiculous the year is. Even though Lamar Jackson is having a dominant year, right? If we get to December 15th, in my opinion, and the Lions and the Bills are on win streaks, and they're facing each other, in my opinion, if one of those quarterbacks has a great day, and you know what I mean by great day, right? At least 3 passing touchdowns, some highlight-worthy play, might be, scrambling out of the pocket, might be staying in the pocket right before getting hit and releasing the football, then the winner of that game, in my opinion, is going to be the next MVP of this league. Right? So, and let me add, there are scenarios where Lamar Jackson could win the MVP, certainly. He's a plus 250 right now. Josh Allen's a plus 125. There is a situation where we reach a point where we think to ourselves, depending on how things break, are we going to overlook a 3-time Super Bowl MVP whose team, if things break a certain way, has the best record in the league, right? In terms of Pat Mahomes. Let's talk about Josh Allen's road to December 15th, right? As I said, he needs to win the games going up to that point. I believe it's doable. He's favored by 7 this week at home over the San Francisco 49ers. Now, San Fran's dangerous. The open question in the room is, has San Fran mailed it in? Or has this proud team, right, that's been to multiple Super Bowls over the last 7 years, right, is this proud team fired up, sick and tired, and determined to make one last push? That's the million-dollar question. We'll find out this week. But understand, after Allen plays San Francisco at home, then they go to Los Angeles to play a Ram team that's having offensive line problems. Then, of course, they go to Detroit for the big game. Right, folks? That's doable. Josh Allen, a plus 125, could show up in Detroit on December 15th on a win streak. That's very doable. Let's talk about Jared Goff. He's home against the Bears. They're favored big in that game. Double-digit line. This is the game that's going to be the problem. He's at home against the Pack. Right, folks? Let's just say, if you saw last week's Packer 49er game, and I know the Niners weren't operating with their starting quarterback, and I know they weren't operating with their most dominant defensive player, right? But my goodness, did Josh Jacobs look good? Right? We talk about Russell Wilson throwing a good deep ball. You want to see a really good deep ball, too. You want to look at Love here from the Packers. Right? Well, just understand, Detroit plays the Pack the week before they play the Bills. Here's the kicker, though. That game is in Detroit. Jared Goff won't have to deal with outdoor weather in Green Bay. So then the coup de grace. We get to December 15th. What's going to happen? Everyone is nervous. The MVP hangs in the balance. Where's that game? Believe it or not, Jared Goff has it right in front of him because that game is the third consecutive home game that the Detroit Lions play. So Jared Goff, if he gets on a roll, he never has to leave home. Right? He's going to have Josh Allen and the Bills in his dome. Right? I think Jared Goff is a live dog. He's a plus 750 right now to win MVP. I'm just telling you, if the Lions continue to roll, if they're in the conversation for the 1 seed in the NFC, and if Goff beats Josh Allen, the favorite, on December 15th, I don't believe the voters are going to dare consider anyone else. I really don't. You know, John Harbaugh already has a ring with the Baltimore Ravens. Right? I mean, that's just simple reality. Right, folks? The Lions don't have a Super Bowl victory. This is a team that was big in the 50s. Right? You're telling me that Jared Goff has this team back. The plane is circling the airport. He takes on the favorite, the plus 125 favorite for NFL MVP on December 15th, staring firmly at being the 1 seed in the NFC. You're telling me that if the Lions win that game, you're telling me that he's not the MVP? I'm telling you, you're kidding yourself. Right? That game is the big game. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot can go wrong. You're watching the game. Both guys are throwing picks. You know, it's a turnover fest. It's sloppy. Meanwhile, some other guy is getting things done. So let's talk about Lamar Jackson here. Now, let me just say, there's going to be some hesitation for a few reasons. The first is the situation at running back for the Ravens. Right? Derrick Henry. My goodness, has he been one of the great acquisitions of this year? Right? Saquon, of course, is another. But understand, Derrick Henry is putting up ridiculous numbers. Look at the yards per carry. It's outrageous. The other problem Lamar Jackson's going to have, and it's huge, concerns the number of MVP awards we're going to give a guy who hasn't won the Super Bowl. Worse yet, how many MVPs are we going to give Lamar Jackson? And I know the postseason shouldn't count, but you and I know this is politics. This is a beauty prize. This is subject to subjectivity. Right? How many MVPs are we going to give a guy who hasn't played in the Super Bowl? You know, we don't have a problem giving Pat Mahomes MVPs because Pat Mahomes makes Super Bowls. Pat Mahomes is wearing rings. Pat Mahomes has won multiple Super Bowl MVPs. Right? The problem is if Lamar Jackson is in the race and he's never been to a Super Bowl and you're thinking, wow, am I going to give him a third MVP? Is there a guy who has won 3 MVPs who hasn't played in a Super Bowl? You know, the other problem too is why they haven't played in a Super Bowl. You know, it'd be different if Lamar Jackson, who again leads the league in passing yards as I make this video, was throwing for 300 yards a game. was great in the playoffs. You're watching a playoff game and you're saying, man, Lamar Jackson's on fire. And then they lose because they're playing some Tom Brady type character, some Pat Mahomes type character who's matching him blow for blow. Right? You remember Brady in that Super Bowl against Philadelphia and Nick Foles. Brady lost. Statistically, an argument can be made that's the best Super Bowl any quarterback has ever had. Look at Brady's numbers. Right? Well, all I can say is that's not the way Lamar Jackson has been losing playoff games, is it? Lamar Jackson has looked pedestrian in playoff games. Now, again, technically it shouldn't matter. I should be looking at the regular season. But you and I know when the competition involves people like Pat Mahomes, it matters. Right? Let me close with this. And understand, my thesis is if Goff or Allen looks great on December 15th, first they make it to the game on a win streak, then one of the two looks spectacular and wins that game, I believe that person's the MVP. But let's talk about an alternative here. Let me also say, with regard to Lamar Jackson, he has a home game this week against Philly. That's vital to his chances to win MVP. If he blows up Philly, if he has great numbers, that's going to really help his candidacy. The following week, he has a road game against the Giants. I believe they win that. Then he has a home game against the Steelers. That's going to be a tough game, but at least the Ravens are playing at home. By that point, he's either in the running or out of the running. The last two games are a road game against the Texans. Folks, they're subpar this year. Right? Understand, too, this is the team that the Ravens beat in the playoffs last year. Then he has a home game against the Browns, but realistically, the last week of the season shouldn't count because a lot of these guys in the running are going to sit out. Now let's talk about the long shot. Right, folks? Again, this is a guy with 3 rings. Pat Mahomes. Home game against the Raiders, they're a double-digit favorite. Count the wins, right? Keep in mind, Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes only have 1 loss on the season as I make this video. They have a home game against the Raiders. Mahomes does not have to sleep in another bed because the following week, it's a tough game. But he has a home game against the Chargers. Then he has a road game against the Browns. Folks, by this point, if Mahomes just simply holds serve, because I'm expecting the Chiefs to be the favorites against the Raiders, against the Chargers, and against the Browns. Right? At this point, you're thinking, okay, they're in the running for home field throughout the playoffs in the AFC. Now, if Josh Allen falls apart against Detroit, in Detroit, just understand Mahomes' last 2 games, and it's really his last game. The next to last game, road game against the Steelers. That's tough. That's tough. But assuming things fall a certain way, Mahomes never has to take the field for the last game of the year, a road game against a hellacious Denver defense. So let me just ask you, potential voter, right? I'm not saying we fans have votes, but we certainly influence the politics, right? If Goff and Allen implode, right? If Saquon falls out of the running because it's really a quarterback award and he doesn't have 2,000 yards, right? If this comes down to Lamar Jackson, no Super Bowl appearances, just won an MVP last year. In other words, he doesn't even get the sympathy that we would give to a guy who's had a great career but who's never won the MVP. Here, Jackson's won multiple MVPs, right? So has Mahomes, right? If it comes down to Lamar Jackson versus Pat Mahomes, and Mahomes has the 1 seed next to his name, even though Mahomes doesn't have the numbers, right? Aren't you going to start hearing a narrative of the Ravens added Derrick Henry? Wow, they look better than ever. Versus, how is Pat Mahomes doing it? The wide receivers on the Chiefs have been injured. How is this team, a team with 1 loss, right? Where would they be without Pat Mahomes? When Mahomes didn't even have Pacheco for most of the year. While Lamar Jackson has had a former 2,000-yard rusher, a guy who's in the top 2 or 3 in the league in rushing yards. Right? So for me, where I'm sprinkling some cheddar, well, the picks I like. Josh Allen, plus 125. Folks, it might be Buffalo's year. It's been a long time coming. Close but no cigar means no cigar. Right? Scott Norwood, there's so many memories, so many great Bills. Kelly, Thurman, Bruce Smith, Andre. There's so many great Bills who did not win rings. If upstate New York comes close, if at the end of the year we're talking about, wow, you know, the AFC is going to have to go through Buffalo, Josh Allen wins the MVP, especially if we have in that narrative, they went to Detroit on December 15th, and they beat the big bad Detroit Lions. Right? Likewise, if the narrative's different, if the narrative is we came close, had a big lead in the playoffs last year, and couldn't pull it off. Baby, we're back. Right? The Bills came, they took their swing, we're still standing. Right? You know, we're arguably in one of the toughest divisions in football. The Pac's in our division. The Vikings are in our division. And we're still standing. Right? If the narrative is that Detroit is back, that last year did not dissuade them. If Jared Goff is the quarterback behind that renaissance, then he's your MVP. He's tantalizing, folks. He's going off at longer odds right now than Saquon Barkley. You're getting Jared Goff at a plus 750. Let's remember again, that game against Buffalo will be the 3rd consecutive home game that the Lions have. Right? Let's just say you're going to have a lot of Lions caught up in, you know, the optimism. They're going to be at home. They're going to be in rhythm. They're not going to be the ones flying into the airport, traveling to the game and looking around the field and realizing that they're playing indoors and having to make that adjustment from outdoors to indoors. No, they'll be at home. Home cooking. That's how I see it. December 15th, 2024. If they get there without a loss, both teams, the winner of that game, if the quarterback distinguishes themselves, if it's not a 10-7 game, if it's a, 30-27 game, where the quarterback has multiple passing touchdowns, where there are highlight-friendly plays that frame the candidacy, I believe the quarterback that wins that December 15th game between the Lions and the Bills is your next MVP. I think things are going to have to break a certain way for Lamar or Pat Mahomes to be in the race. Let me just say, Saquon Barkley is going to have to get to 2,000 rushing yards to even have a chance. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.